The first sound on the body cam video isn't yelling, it's metal. A sharp crack echoes through a quiet parking lot as a woman swings what looks like a metal water bottle directly into the hood of a marked patrol SUV. One officer immediately backs away and shouts, "Ma'am, stop! Step back from the vehicle now!" But she doesn't stop. Instead, witnesses say she screamed that the police couldn't touch her, then slammed the object into the windshield hard enough to spiderweb the glass. Seconds later, three officers rushed forward, one grabbing her arm while another tried to keep bystanders back. And in less than 2 minutes, what started as a routine parking dispute turned into felony criminal damage charges, resisting allegations, and a viral body cam case that sparked a major debate online. Because the real question wasn't just whether she damaged police property, it was whether officers escalated the situation too aggressively, or whether this was one of those rare moments where someone genuinely believed the rules simply did not apply to them. And once the body cam footage came out, people were split almost instantly. Most people don't know their rights until it's too late. If you want to stay one step ahead and never get caught off guard, hit subscribe now. And if this opened your eyes, share it with someone and tell me your thoughts in the comments. Some viewers said the officer stayed surprisingly calm. Others said the arrest became unnecessarily physical. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. The moment she struck that patrol car, the entire legal situation changed. This incident happened outside a shopping plaza just after 6 p.m. on a weekday evening. According to police reports and witness statements, 47-year-old Linda Carver had arrived at the plaza after an argument with a towing company over her vehicle being booted earlier that day. Employees later told investigators she appeared agitated before officers ever arrived. Carver wasn't a celebrity, politician, or public official. Neighbors described her as outspoken and confrontational at times, but otherwise ordinary. She reportedly worked in property management and had no major criminal history publicly associated with her before this incident. What mattered that evening was why police were called. Employees at the plaza claimed Carver was blocking traffic near the loading zone while yelling at workers over parking enforcement. One caller reported that she had begun hitting signs and throwing objects. Now, this is important. At that stage, officers weren't responding to a violent felony crime. They were responding to what appeared to be a disturbance complaint involving property damage and disorderly conduct concerns. And initially, the interaction looked routine. Body cam footage reportedly shows officers approaching calmly. "Ma'am, can we talk to you for a second?" "I didn't do anything wrong," Carver responds immediately. "We got a call about a disturbance. That's because these people are harassing me." At first, it's tense but controlled. Officers try asking for identification. Carver refuses. One officer points toward the illegally parked SUV and asks if it belongs to her. She says yes. Then an employee from the plaza walks up and tells officers she allegedly struck a parking barrier with her vehicle moments earlier. That's when things begin changing. One officer tells Carver they are investigating possible property damage. Her tone immediately sharpens. "You people always believe them," she snaps. Another officer attempts to separate her from the crowd forming nearby. "Ma'am, just step over here and we'll sort this out." But instead of stepping aside, Carver walks directly toward the patrol SUV parked behind her vehicle. At first, officers seem confused. Then she grabs a large metal bottle from the ground. "Ma'am, don't do that." Too late. She slams it into the front hood once, then again, and then directly into the windshield. The sound changes everything. One officer immediately radios for backup. Another draws closer and shouts, "Drop it now." Instead, witnesses say Carver yelled, "You can't arrest me over this." But here's where things changed. Up until that moment, officers were dealing with a relatively minor disturbance investigation. The instant she intentionally struck a marked police vehicle, the situation potentially became felony criminal damage to government property in many jurisdictions. And legally, that matters a lot. Generally, officers need either probable cause or reasonable suspicion depending on the stage of the interaction. Reasonable suspicion allows officers to briefly detain someone while investigating possible criminal activity. Probable cause is the higher standard typically required for an arrest. Before the patrol car was damaged, officers may have only had reasonable suspicion connected to the disturbance complaint. But after the alleged vandalism happened directly in front of officers and cameras, the legal threshold likely changed immediately. In many states, intentionally damaging government property, especially a police vehicle, can lead to enhanced charges compared to ordinary vandalism. And courts usually treat crimes committed directly in an officer's presence differently because there's little ambiguity about what officers personally observed. Now, that does not automatically justify every action police take afterward. That distinction matters, because viewers online focused heavily on what happened next. After the windshield strike, officers moved quickly. One officer grabs Carver's wrist. "Put your hands behind your back." "No, get off me." She pulls away. Another officer steps in from the side while a third attempts to remove the metal bottle from her hand. For several seconds, the situation becomes chaotic. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting." "Put your arm back." Witnesses later describe seeing Carver twist away repeatedly while officers attempted to handcuff her near the patrol SUV. At one point, an officer forces her against the side of the vehicle. That clip spread rapidly online. Critics argued the officers became overly aggressive with a middle-aged woman who appeared emotionally unstable rather than dangerous. Supporters pointed out something equally important. She had already damaged property, ignored commands, and physically pulled away during the arrest attempt. And this is where officer discretion matters. Police are generally trained to gain control quickly once an arrest decision is made, especially in public settings where crowds are gathering and emotions are escalating. The concern from an officer's perspective is loss of control. If a suspect refuses commands after already committing an aggressive act, officers may reasonably fear further escalation. But force analysis is rarely just about whether force was technically allowed. It's also about proportionality. Could the same arrest have been made with less physical force? Could officers have slowed things down? Could one officer have continued verbal de-escalation instead of immediately moving hands-on? Those questions become central later, because once force enters the picture, every second gets scrutinized frame by frame. Eventually, officers got Carver into handcuffs, but the confrontation still wasn't over. Body cam footage reportedly shows her continuing to yell while seated on the curb. "This is abuse," one officer replied. "You smashed the police vehicle." "I barely touched it." The windshield says otherwise. Photos released later showed visible cracking across the passenger side of the glass, along with dents near the hood area. At that point, the legal discussion became deeper than simple vandalism, because several additional issues entered the picture at once. First, resisting arrest. In many jurisdictions, physically pulling away from officers after lawful arrest commands can lead to separate resisting or obstruction charges, even if the underlying offense later gets reduced or dismissed. But these laws vary significantly by state. Some jurisdictions require active physical resistance. Others allow broader interpretations, including refusing commands or tensing arms during cuffing. That's why these cases often become controversial. Video may show resistance to one viewer and panic to another. Second, use of force. Police are generally allowed to use reasonable force to complete an arrest, but reasonable depends heavily on the total circumstances. Courts often examine several factors, including how serious was the suspected crime. Did the suspect pose an immediate threat? Were they actively resisting or attempting to flee? And this is where public opinion often separates from legal analysis. Someone can dislike how an arrest looked emotionally, while a court still finds the force legally justified. At the same time, departments may still discipline officers for tactics considered unnecessary, rude, or poorly executed, even if constitutional limits were not violated. Legal does not always mean professional. Professional does not always mean wise, and wise does not always mean safe. That gray area is where many viral body cam controversies live. Then came the aftermath. Carver was reportedly charged with felony mischief, resisting arrest, and disorderly conduct. Initial bond paperwork described the patrol vehicle damage as exceeding several $1,000s once windshield replacement and repairs were included. Her attorney later argued the officers escalated a mental health-related emotional outburst instead of de-escalating it. Meanwhile, the police department publicly defended the arrest. In a statement, officials said officers acted within department policy while responding to an individual who became physically destructive and refused lawful commands. Body cam footage was eventually released after public records requests. Online reaction exploded. Some viewers said the footage showed typical probable cause and a fairly restrained arrest considering the damage involved. Others focused on the physical takedown near the patrol vehicle, arguing officers should have created distance and slowed the confrontation instead of rushing hands-on immediately. Civil rights commentators pointed out another important reality. Once emotions take over during police encounters, even small decisions can instantly transform a minor situation into a criminal case with life-changing consequences. And according to local reporting, prosecutors eventually reduced some charges during plea negotiations, though the property damage allegations remained central throughout the case. No evidence publicly suggested officers were fired or criminally investigated over the arrest itself. But the incident remains controversial because it exposed how quick